Hello, everybody. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Martijn Lofvers. I'm the Chief Trendwatcher of Supply Chain Media. I'm also the Editor-in-Chief of Supply Chain Movement. That's a European quarterly magazine, still in print, but also a huge LinkedIn group. I think over 50,000 members, bi-weekly newsletter. And I'm the architect of the IT Supermap Europe, and we'll talk about it later. In this live webinar, in the next 60 minutes, we're going to talk about how AI turns TMS and transport data into action. Yes, and we talk about AI, but we'll expand it and also in practicalities. So, and with me, I have an expert. Elmer Spruijt, VP Transportation Management EMEA at Descartes. Welcome.
Thanks, Martijn. Great to be here today.
So, and we talked about before. We have done webinars before. You have studied a long time ago physics and astronomy. So, are you following SpaceX or not so much?
Yeah, but I have to say more from maybe an investment interest than from real scientific interest so far, to be honest. But yeah, it's still on my radar as some other astronomy topics.
All right. So we're going to talk about supply chain execution, TMS, AI. That's what we talk about. You have a lot of experience in that field from software vendors, and we'll talk about later at Descartes. A few household matters. So this webinar is being recorded right now. It will be made available on YouTube within 48 hours. Also, the slides will be made available through our website as a PDF. The audience is on mute. So, but you can use the chat to communicate with each other. If you want to ask questions to Elmer or me, please use the Q&A functionality. So that's one below. You see the small text bubbles on the right side below the chat functionality. So if the questions are in line of the conversation I will be having with Elmer, then I will ask his questions. And if not being answered right away, we have a Q&A at the end. And after that, we are going to sit down in the virtual lounge like this. And so after the whole hour, you can sit down with us in a virtual lounge with Elmer and me and to have a further conversation. As of this point, we're putting off our camera. Why? You can enlarge your screen to have a better view on the slides. All right. So like I mentioned, I'm the architect of the SCM Webinar Europe. So this is the 2026 version. You may have seen it. So basically, supply chain media, with a lot of research and input from vendors, we decide which vendors will get a subway station on a specific subway line, ERP, WMS, SNP, and you name it. It's all in there. And of course, Descartes as a major player is on it. And here you see also previously acquisitions, KSD in the global trade management field, and all flavors. Elmer, so you're mainly responsible for transport management. So do you see all these kind of subway stations being visited by your clients?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's many are really important and increasingly important in today's world. So lots of traffic in the stations and also more correlations or combinations as you can maybe combine certain stations. So it's something that we'll probably touch upon later as well.
Yeah. And also since last year, we created this. Why? Bigger companies, especially multinationals, manufacturing companies especially, they have a whole plethora of all kinds of applications. And basically, they can fill out in this form for their own company which applications do they use, ERP on the level down below, maybe you have a data lake, etc. Moving up, you have all kinds of applications. To the left, it's more on the supplier management. To the right, it's more customer facing, like CRM and e-fulfillment and that kind of stuff. And in the middle, you see in the blue area, see a lot of logistics, advanced planning and scheduling, WMS and TMS, etc. And moving up to a higher level, it goes from planning to analytics, and in the top field you see business process mining and business intelligence, that kind of stuff. I highlight in yellow the logistic execution applications. So I can imagine that a lot of manufacturing companies, but also logistic companies, do recognize this kind of building blocks of IT. And maybe, and Elmer, I'm interested to hear it from you. So we have dissected the small blue boxes and the highlighted boxes in yellow, but sometimes they are more integrated like yours, maybe, or not.
Yeah, exactly. I think as transport is becoming more and more complex in today's world, let's say the need to have all data in one solution is increasing, and the capabilities of the solution as well. So I think there's more and more companies that really see typically they call it the TMS, the backbone of their whole logistics planning and execution. So they often combine the various blocks into one TMS.
Yeah. And one other thing, what I'm also using in this forum for, especially when I talk to larger multinationals, they ask me how to start with AI, etc. And you see the small lines connected to ERP or a data lake. So basically, and we'll talk about AI later on, but basically they decide where to start the first AI agent, in which box, and does this AI agent is being addressed on its own, or do we need a data lake to access other data from ERP, etc.? So basically, this kind of overview is helpful to visualize where to start with AI, with AI agent, and only IT department have this kind of overview normally, but you can download this on our website and people can fill it out. And this is basically a conversation starter for how to roadmap your AI application, that kind of stuff. So Elmer, do you also have conversations with your customers where to start with AI agent, or where does it work and where not?
Yeah, for sure. So there's lots of interaction, and I think I will show a few examples of stuff that's now live. But at the same time, we're discussing with various customers on what can we do next and what makes the greatest benefit for them. So there's quite a lot of interaction on either the features that the TMS provides, but also how does the solution interact with their users, right? So both domains get attention, and I think it's a really exciting time today to be in software, and then certainly in supply chain software, because the possibilities are increasing every day almost.
Yeah, and basically, I was asked by a specific multinational American one, a big one, to create this kind of visualization because it's so complex and there are so many possibilities. And my statement is the only way out is by visualization. So if you can visualize it, you can discuss it, and hopefully you can build it and realize this. So this is why we created this. All right. But before we move into the TMS space specifically, maybe a quick words about Descartes as a company.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think, why is it interesting to listen to our experience? I think Descartes is really a global company. So we have offices around the world, and now around 2,600 people working at Descartes. And I think around 1,000 of them are active in Europe. Many customers are 30,000, but even a much larger network, but we'll come on that later. And we've been growing for the last 21 years. So we're a publicly traded company, so no loans or private equity investments in Descartes. So I think in that sense, really stable and exciting environment. And we're pushing the limit, focused on logistics software, right? That's really what we offer to our customers.
So and I have done a lot of analysis in the last 15 years, also for the IT Super Map, to see which business software vendors are growing, and you see in the logistics space, there are quite a few who are growing year on year. So the supply chain and logistics space is still a healthy environment. Of course, there's a lot of things happening in the world related to supply chain, and it's in the middle of a lot of board of directors, so that's also healthy. But also pre-COVID and all the other black swans afterwards, it's still a healthy environment, and that is reflected on your revenue growth year on year. If you look at the portfolio, so we mentioned also the subway stations, but maybe you can expand a little of the whole portfolio of Descartes and what does it mean altogether?
Yeah, and I think one is to understand a bit what we're doing, but it's also directly relevant for the use cases that we'll discuss later, because if you want to use AI, you need to have reliable data, and the more data and the more context, the richer your data is, the better your AI can function. So from that perspective, good to understand that we at Descartes focus on, and this is just sort of groups of solutions, let's say, focused on global trade intelligence, right? So lots of stuff around denied party screening, which unfortunately in today's world is still really important topic, but also very much specific solutions around customs or for LSPs or for companies who operate their own or dedicated fleets. So we do a lot of stuff with routing and also the e-commerce WMS part. And many of them are also in certain shapes and forms connected to the TMS, to the Transportation Management. But certainly all of them are exchanging data on our network, right? What we call the global logistics network. And that's, as I mentioned at the beginning, really important for us to expand the data that we have. And now, let's say it used to be already very relevant to automate and optimize things, but now with AI, it becomes even more valuable to have that complete and rich data set to detect anomalies and to take action to correct things.
Yeah, and if you look at 1 year ago, we have a lot of tariff turmoil, announcement of all kind of import taxes, that kind of stuff. And mostly it's on the supplier side, but also it relates to transport management. Can you reroute, or should we take this into account? And maybe based on this kind of tariffs, it's better to source from other country, that kind of stuff. So the left side of your solution side is getting more and more integrated and connected to the right side with transport management and that kind of logistics environment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's again the turmoil and sometimes sort of nature, but sometimes also nurture or humans or specific individuals in the world. They can quietly impact logistics a lot.
Yeah. And what I also read from IMD Business School last week, this kind of turmoil is not fading away. It stays, because in the long run we'll see commercial blocks, global geopolitical blocks being there. So I think it's here to stay. So it's not a temporary things like denied party screening, that kind of stuff, and the tariffs. So it will stay. Getting back to the Descartes, you mentioned already, what is your customer base and how does it relate?
Yeah, so the network and also our solutions, so they're typically a little bit different for LSPs and cargo owners or shippers, but they're certainly valuable for both to connect and automatically share data, and now more and more automate activities and take corrective actions. So this is just a few logos. Of course, I cannot put hundreds of thousands of logos on a slide, but there's many companies that rely on our network and on the solutions that they use on top of it to optimize their logistics flows. And as I said, right, it's and you saw that in the portfolio, there can be a wide range of solutions that they use, which means that we have a lot of data, a lot of context in our network available to help them to make even more and smarter decisions today.
Yeah. If I look at it, on the left side, the cargo owners, the manufacturers and wholesalers and retailers. So it's in different industries, but also some are B2B and some are B2C. Some are more upstream, like the BASF, so the chemicals. So it's all over the supply chain, upstream, downstream, in that sense. And looking on the right, it's contract logistics, it's transportation, it's ocean freight, it's air freight. So you see on the left, the whole supply chain is being serviced upstream, downstream, B2C, B2B. And the right side also all kind of logistics is there.
Yeah, no, and that's a good point actually, because we've seen, I think, over the last years, maybe the last decade, that since the solution is more richer in features and functionalities, that we see a mix and overflow between, for example, parcel shipments that might be executed first and ocean shipments separately. But now, as the solution covers both of them, we see a lot of benefits for customers that use a different wide range of transport modes, and the system can make decisions on, this might be parcel, or maybe even later during the day, so now I'll switch it to FTL or LTL shipment and save a lot of money. So I think that's also caused by the increased functionalities in a TMS that help companies now to have one single solution to really make decisions across the different transport modes, and even combining sometimes outbound and inbound shipments into one physical load.
Yeah. So you mentioned, so you have your platform, so you have a lot of data. So what kind of data is generated by all this kind of companies?
Yeah, so it ranges from let's say the of course the sort of the planning that's created, but then you have very concrete data in terms of booking or shipping instructions for ocean and VGM messages, lots of status data, ETAs, invoices, PDFs, proof of delivery. So it's really a wide variety of data, which is slightly different per transport mode. For FTL, we can also do the real-time tracking and get the GPS pings, for example, and then calculate the ETA even more precise than if you need to rely on a status message. So there's quite a lot of different data points that we get from carriers and forwarders, and we enrich it even further with external sources like AIS data or government data or traffic data that we also source.
I think it was mentioned that data is a new oil. I always say, yeah, it's crude oil. You have to refine it first. And with AI, when you want to use AI, the best thing is use a lot of data, because AI can make some sense out of it more easily than humans. So I can imagine with this kind of huge amount of data, there's a lot to explore with AI. Do you also, we talk about AIs and later on, but do you also see some trends you can pull out of this whole data lake of all kind of booking shipments, etc.? See trends happening?
Yeah, and we're increasing that even further because we already had sort of logic, for example, deep learning on ETA calculations and that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But with AI, it's easier to detect anomalies and missing data and fix missing data, right? And we'll show an example of that later. But yeah, fixing the data is a first step to have more data, which is then again can be used by, let's say, another AI agent to make a further decision on either replanning or adjusting or notifying the next in the logistics chain.
And if you look at the two sides of the coin here, on the left side, the cargo owners, the shippers, and on the right side, the logistics service providers, where do you think the awareness of AI is higher?
Yeah, I don't think you can really say it's one or the other. I think a year ago, maybe there was more discussions at the cargo owner side, at least what I witnessed. But now I think there's also various LSPs that are also applying different AI initiatives inside their business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a little bit more equal today.
Okay. All right. Let's move on. Let's talk about transportation. So, what is the role of transportation nowadays?
Yeah, and I think this is exciting, right? Although, let's say the turmoil that we touched upon before is not nice, but I think at least for the first, maybe for the last few years, you can finally talk in birthday parties about logistics, and people they have an opinion, or they know a little bit what you're talking about. So there's lots of stuff going on that's impacting. If you get your goods, yes or no, and being resilient as a company is critical to perform. And next to that, costs have increased. Either it's a shortage of drivers or shortage of fuel or other parameters, making the management of your transportation even more critical. Because if you are able to adjust and optimize, you increase your margin and lower your costs. So that's critical. And at the same time, with all the stuff that's going on, customers, but also partners and other stakeholders are expecting more and more, right? We're sort of used to always know where our parcel is and when it arrives. We expect the same for an ocean container, for any B2B interaction as well. So it's also from that perspective critical that you are aware where your goods are, and you automatically update and interact with your stakeholders, partners, or your own teams across the world, and with your end customers, and give them the insights that they need to make their own plans.
If I look back, before the COVID-19 pandemic, it was quite stable worldwide and globally, and it was all predictable, and most of the times it was just in time and that kind of stuff. And then during COVID, all things changed, lockdowns, shortages, and you name it, we've seen it. Then it changed to just in case, so buying upfront, preloading, that kind of stuff. Way more inventories, that kind of stuff. That it is also a huge impact on working capital. But at the same time, the expectation with the rise of e-commerce during lockdowns, etc., there were all kind of apps. Where is my goods and the ETAs? And in the consumer world, we also have seen that, and people in the business also want this kind of experience, that more and more. So that's probably why the 81% of organizations view transportation as differentiator or a competitive weapon.
Yeah, for sure. I think you can really say that it was often seen as a necessary evil and just a cost center. And now transportation has really moved from the back office to the boardroom, and it's being discussed as a weapon to differentiate from your competitors.
Yeah. And even I've talked to cargo owners who are shipping stuff, high valuable stuff from China so from Europe to China, and not using the Suez Canal means 4 extra weeks of transportation, and in the long run, in a year time, that means 4 weeks of less ability to sell, because basically that's the one thing. So we are missing out 4 weeks of sales because we have to grow through South Africa and not using the Suez Canal. So basically, we see now transportation have a huge P&L impact, and the board of directors is willing to discuss it because it has a huge impact. Do you see that more that's on the board level being discussed, what the impact is of transportation?
Yeah, as the expectation increases, right? Then, as you say, the inventory levels, it's not sort of, oh, we'll just order and it goes. We want to have the lowest available costs, and therefore it gets more attention to know what's going on, and then of course amplified with all the stuff that's causing issues in execution. It makes it really top of mind for lots of senior folks in cargo owners and LSPs.
Yeah, and I see more like here you have 4 points, but I see the triangle: cost, service, and cash, and that's the where you have to trade off. CFOs especially know this: cost, cash, and service. So basically, you want to hire service, you need an inventory, and et cetera, et cetera. So the trade-offs are more tangible, and this is also being addressed here. Talk about transportation. Is responsible for TMS. So how does TMS evolve in all this?
Yeah, I think there's maybe an argument as a TMS evolved and earned its place in the boardroom, or as it first got to the boardroom and therefore it has evolved. I think maybe let's park that discussion, but for sure, I think some time ago, let's say, the TMSs were more and more static planning systems, and to be honest, some of them today still are. But as we discussed, right, with all those things going on, execution really matters. So your TMS should not be just a nice planning and then hoping it follows the plan, which it typically doesn't really do, but it should also manage execution. So you should have one platform that is indeed connected with all those parties that are involved with your transport, and constantly real-time checking is the transport going according to plan, and if not, what do I need to do? And I think modern TMSs do that. We have the network, we collect all the data, we gather the data, when we analyze, and the TMS is constantly checking if something is going wrong and if additional actions are needed, and if we can use it maybe for planning next time. It can be one consequence, but it can also be meaning, hey, we need to notify maybe the leg 3 forwarder, for example, to pick something up earlier or later, depending on what's happening during the execution. So it's critical nowadays, if you want to manage those different elements that we just discussed, that your TMS is on top of execution.
Yeah, and I see, this is a cycle. It's like a quality cycle, PDCA loop, that kind of stuff. You are learning, and hopefully you improving your service and your transportation. That's what I get out of this. And another thing, what I encounter the last few years, what is leading, transport or warehousing, TMS or WMS? And now I see more and more that, because of how to address it, drop shipments, etc., do it more smarter. That you see more and more TMS is leading the supply chain execution as an input for WMS, whereas in the past it may be the other way around. You have your WMS, and you have inbound streams and outbound streams. But I see more and more that TMS also is a supply chain execution leading platform also for a WMS. So that's what I see lately.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think we see, we already mentioned that the TMS is often now really handling all transport modes, but it also often, for some of the more advanced customers, takes care of inbound and outbound. And then some indeed can be direct shipments from a supplier to an end customer. So the TMS, if it's much more dynamic, you can save costs and use that ability from the TMS to really optimize all the flows. And therefore, I think it becomes more of a leading system directing what's happening and not following a static plan.
Yeah. And I also see that we had a TMS demo day earlier this year, and I also hear and for companies looking for a TMS solution, they say also it's easier to calculate the ROI on TMS compared to WMS because there's so much savings, etc. So that's what I also see, because it's a more complex environment in transportation compared to warehousing on its own. Maybe you have a lot of warehouses and you can save money, but TMS is there. There are more ways to earn your money, your investment money way back. And another thing, what I experience talking to companies, both cargo owners and logistic companies looking for TMS, with e-commerce and returns, that's also sometimes a headache, all the returns of e-commerce. And it's better to have it upfront planned from your TMS and then connected to your WMS or your warehouse. This is what you can expect as returns, than the other way around and being overloaded by returns. So I see that in the e-commerce world, also that kind of stuff as a major pain point. You have also a fulfillment customers, haven't you?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, so and indeed, there's also with tracking on what happens with return shipments. So there's lots of discussions between cargo owners and LSPs, how they're handled, how they're tracked. And that's an increasingly bigger challenge, as we see lots of people ordering lots of products and then returning quite a lot of them. So that's for sure something that's on people's minds.
So maybe you can address the full shipment circle or cycle. Maybe you can explain what you are addressing and how it impacts the platform and how does it relate to all that.
Yeah. So what's important to really be able to take any type of action or share updates is indeed have the insights, right? So that's the network that we already mentioned a little bit, but I think here on the slide a bit more detail on what are, for example, some of the elements that are part of our network. So of course it's thousands or hundreds of thousands of LSPs or carriers that are on the network from all transport modes. But it's also ports and terminals and customs organizations, or the AIS data that we mentioned, or we have over 2 million mobile apps that are used by truck drivers that we use for PODs and tracking, or we route over 140,000 trucks every day. So there's lots of different data elements. And again, as I said before, it's important to understand that, for example, with ocean, we're not just tracking, we're also, from a TMS perspective, doing the booking, sharing the VTM, the shipping instructions, getting invoices back. So the connection is not just a tracking, but it's a two-way interaction. And we have those connections with all ocean carriers. We also have the same with air, because Descartes is already in the game for 30 years, so we're building this network, right? It's never finished. We add over 2,000 carriers every month. So it's a constantly growing network in terms of new parties and new data points that we add, because we need it for our customers to make more automated and smarter decisions.
Do you see a specific growth in certain region about new carriers, more dynamic than other areas?
No, I think, well, in general, at Descartes, we're most active in Europe and North America and LATAM as well, more. So I think that most of the new carriers are from those regions. And of course, there's lots of smaller ones that we onboard. So yeah, the larger ones we typically already have.
And I can imagine you have all kind of sources, but I can imagine that the type of messages and user interfaces are specifically targeted for the type of users. So because I can imagine if you all put this in one user interface, you get nauseous and dizzy. So I think that's also the new way of thinking, how to address the right people with the right message in the right way.
Yeah, and there's I mean, connection is sounds easy, but unfortunately, logistics is not super standard. So we have tons and tons of different technologies available, right? From old school, but still very much used EDI connections, where we have many different parties to APIs, and now in the age of AI, there's even some experiments with some more MCP type of interactions. So that's exciting, and yeah, we have lots of functional mappings as well, how we combine and help our customers to make sense out of all of those different messages that they get from their carriers. So it's a technical and functional mapping game that we play as well.
So, and what I see, at the start of COVID, a lot of cargo owners wanted to have real-time transport visibility, and then there came all kind of platforms popping up. But in the start, and you are even pre-COVID already busy with this real-time transport planning stuff. But there was also what I saw, missing information, because it was still relying on apps for the truck drivers. But then later on, a few years later, and it's 2022 and 2023, a lot of applications are using telematics. So in the trucks itself, and then the visibility improved massively. So that's also where I see it. So there's lots of ways to get data on where are my goods, etc., and what is the ETA.
Yeah, and we're even now at the point where we have most trackings for FTLs, for example, via telematics or onboard units of trucks. But since we also have the app, we're now starting to double track. So we use both devices to track, because with the app, for example, we can also get a easier approval delivery picture from the driver. So there's some benefits from having the app as well. So we want to increase reliability even further, get to 100% tracking, that we use both sources for many FTL trackings today.
And if you look at the ports, because you've seen strikes in the US a few years ago and in Long Beach, etc. So it's also important, where are my ships? Are they in front of the port? Are they at the dock? Are they unloading, etc.? So that's you also, and that can depend on days or weeks even, to have better data where it is. So it's getting more. The devil is more in the details, also in that sense.
Yeah, and it's so we connected lots of ports and terminals, but we're there. Maybe we discussed it before, where some of the the subway stations are meeting each other, we had the customs filings and customs connections, and we're now using that data as well, because sometimes containers are stopped and customs is busy with it, but we use the data from customs and also include it in our data for tracking. So we get that data source as well to give our customers the best visibility that's possible.
Yeah, so if you track down the whole flow, the administrative flow of goods next to the physical flow of goods, you see all kind of bottlenecks that could be customers, etc. And you have to be aware of that to get real ETAs and throughput times across the whole chain. Okay, this is, you have mentioned a lot of sources, etc. But how do you connect it all? And how does it look like?
Yeah, so it's and this is actually we're more a UI picture is not becoming less important because we have the system doing more and more, but just to give a feel about what it is. So in essence, the system constantly know what's the status of all of your shipments wherever they are around the world, and what the expected ETA is. And I think here again you see also the importance of combining the data, the context of the data on, for example, if we talk about an ocean shipment or an air shipment, what's happening in the next leg, right? So you want to have the system to have the ability not only to track what's the ETA, when it will arrive and send the notification, but also know on which party will pick it up. And if it is late, what are the agreements, and can I automatically notify that party to adjust their planning, and notify then maybe the warehouse or the customer where it's being delivered in the end on what the updated planning is. So I think it's critical that your TMS has both the visibility but also the planning data available, so it can use the let's say for example that ETA update to adjust the planning and make sure that everybody is working based on the latest data. So that's important. And of course users can still also do stuff or approve decisions, right? It's not always needed that it's fully automatic, but more and more we see that the system automatically takes action, signals deviation, and takes action itself.
Right, I got a question from the audience. So what is the level of tracking using telematics in EMEA, Europe primarily?
So I think in EMEA it's 90% or higher that's using telematics. It's a bit tricky sometimes because some carriers and forwarders, for example, like to use that data and share it via their own TMS with us, right? So it depends a bit on if they allow us to get the data directly from the telematics device in the truck or via their TMS. So sometimes there's a source in between, let's say.
Yeah. But maybe that's also, let's talk about Debbie, and let's talk about AI and an AI agent. Maybe, and then we get also what, point of delivery approval, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So this is an example we'll share a little bit more later, but I think if we are at the stage where we have a system that's connected, that has all the data and knows what's happening with the shipments, then indeed one of the first things that we worked on is say, okay, let's make sure that we have as much data as possible. So we have indeed ability to get the data from telematics device, but in some cases and as a backup track, we also like to have the driver app used. And Debbie is an AI agent that we, actually the mother of the developer who initially developed it, that's taking action when we don't get the data that we're expecting to get from the cases where we want to have the driver app. So in that sense, Debbie is then calling, first detecting, hey, we're not getting data, we should have it, let's take action. Then she's calling the driver and helping them to install the app and make sure that it functions well, and that we have the full data available. And then we'll come to that later. There's other agents that sort of take the next step based on the data. But this is a very easy, simple use case where we saw, tons of impact. And I think it's it's a great example on how AI can help you to get more data that's then used by other AI to take more decisions and create more business impact.
The good point here is, I get a lot of questions from supply chain professionals how to use AI and how to use AI agents. The one thing is quite clear that's missing here, that's mentioned here, is that an AI agent should be having a very clear goal, and Debbie has a clear goal. A check about the issue and act upon it. Call the driver. So basically, each AI agent should have a clear goal and know what to do, and that's I think good mentioned here. I was wondering, does the truck driver expect a call, or does he expect any calls from Descartes as usual? And is this the kind of thing new, or was there a real life Debbie before, or is it new?
Yeah, we tested with a real life Debbie before, but that was quite expensive. And the nice thing is Debbie speaks a lot of languages.
Yeah.
And Debbie is very flexible. So we didn't do it, although some of our customers had sort of similar real life Debbies with some other use cases as well. But it's now you and we created more rules and beginning the conversations. Debbie was a little bit slow to respond, but after I think the second version of Debbie, she was quite fluid. The conversations are really to the point, and I think it's really good and human-like interaction that you have with Debbie. It's and like you said, she's really goal-oriented, and there's lots of features on. She's not calling every minute, so we have some settings on how often is she calling, or she leaves a voicemail, yes or no, that type of stuff. So you can set it up, and then Debbie acts accordingly.
But in general, before Debbie and before AI agent, was it a usable thing to call a truck driver, or was it, where are you, or what was the situation before AI agents calling? Were people calling from either, the transport manager who is setting out the stuff, or what was the case before?
Yeah, so unfortunately, there's still, and today, right, lots of calling happening in logistics to carriers on what's going on, where is it, when is it arriving, or emails flying by, right? So those are certainly standard still, I would say, in lots of operations. And we also have customers that, for example, even though we have the geo-fencing, right, so we can track when the truck arrives, that they want to know really if the trailer was unloaded, and they had themselves people calling to get the final confirmation, because then they can invoice. So we have customers that or had customers that were doing a lot of calling or mailing for quite mundane checks.
And I think basically this is the good point. Debbie is calling the source, who should know if the truck have arrived, and not calling the carrier office, and they will call the truck driver, and maybe it's outsourced, etc., and all kind of levels in between, so that going to the source is way better. And so you already said it, Debbie is 24/7 available. So what was the productivity of Debbie?
Yeah, and I think you said it right. Debbie is very neat to the point, and this is for the truck drivers use case. It starts with having, let's say, the data in the TMS, right, and then you can detect and take that action. And for Debbie, as we had many truck drivers in our network, she's calling over 200,000 times per month. So that's really significant amount, starting 21 calls every minute. So we made the calculation that would have otherwise required us 17 people to execute those calls. So it's really an enormous amount of calls, and this is just the starting stone. But it gets more data. Our customers are getting more insights, and their customers know when stuff is arriving, because we see a lot of additional installations of the app and therefore tracking data in our network for those shipments.
So I would say, I would expect there would be a huge rise of calls, but later on you would expect lesser calls because the truck drivers have installed their apps and have learned, and it's getting better. So you don't need Debbie to call, although it's an AI agent and it doesn't cost any money. We also see track over time these calls per truck driver or per carrier, how it evolve. Maybe you can have an award. This carrier has the best onboarding, etc. So Debbie doesn't have to call this carrier anymore.
Yeah, and this is just in essence, this is only an edge case, right? So in our network, there are billions and billions of transactions and data points. So this is just one of the first ones, and we'll discuss later on some other examples. But we didn't put Debbie on, let's say, the first month directly on everything, and so there were some guardrails. And she's now live for, I think, around 7 months. And I think we're steady at the volume because we're also adding some more customer groups. But I would also expect, maybe, I hope at least, a little bit of a decline of calls in the next few months. But let's see what happens.
So one thing, you mentioned this Debbie would save 17 FTEs, 17 persons calling. But last month, the CEO of NVIDIA explained that sometimes the number of tokens is more expensive than an FTE. So basically, I'm curious to see the number of tokens and the cost of tokens, probably not compared to 17 FTE. But there's also something what we see last month and last quarters, that a lot of companies using AI agents spending more and more money on tokens for AI agents to go. So that's also something you have to be aware of. It's still good, probably safer than a 17 FTE, but the number of tokens and the cost of tokens also will rise.
Yeah, for sure, and that's a real discussion that we have, right? And we have it for some of our AI agents that are using tokens, but also we have a lot of those 2,600 people are developers that are developing using AI, and they also can use a lot of tokens. So the whole topic of let's say tokens cost is a serious discussion, and that's for us and therefore also for our customers. So we're now looking at what's really valuable for our customers, because it's not for free.
No. And also, this is beneficial for the carrier, for the receiver, but also for the sending company, the cargo owner. But also Descartes is being paid by tracked shipment. So it's also beneficial for your side.
Yep. Yeah. No, so everybody benefits.
Yeah, that's good. Let's talk about other AI agents. So maybe you can have some examples explained.
Yeah. So Debbie is just let's say the first stepping stone on various other AI agents that we have live. We cannot go through all of them, but maybe just to highlight some of them, right? So I mentioned, for example, the check on if something really is delivered on top of the geofencing, and really a truck is unloaded. So that's where we had Ava, and that was also a case with a customer that was now themselves calling, and they heard about Debbie and said, hey, can we make a variant of that? And so we built that with Ava. And we have, of course, the sort of what we call Sean, the support agent, right? So that's the interaction with our users. But we're also getting more interaction with our carriers. So sometimes indeed, when there is no truck driver data and we just rely on telematics, also something can go wrong. So we can either have Chuck or Dean take action also towards the carrier, or maybe even another third party where we would expect the data from. And then again, the network becomes really important, right? Because it's not a network where we just have the data, but it's a network where we would like to know who's the source, who and how can we interact with that source if some data is missing or not in the right format that we expected. So our network is, we discussed there's lots of type of data, but we're also making sure that we have a good insight on the sources that we have for our network, and that we can take action when something is missing, and preferably automatic with those sources. And the same is with Maya, right? If documents are missing, we want to have an agent that can follow up, or maybe help to automatically create where possible. So there's various topics where we need specialized agents focused on a specific task to support and make sure that, let's say, the execution is in line with the planning.
Yeah. So now I experienced myself within my own company, also the Maya thing. You can ask ChatGPT, how should I fill out this specific form? When you import goods, etc. And you can get that. And basically, if you have this alert up front, and you had some examples how to fill out a certain form to get things going. So I was ordering a book, etc., from the US, that kind of stuff. But it's good to get this alert up front. So it saves a lot of time, and also where is my book, etc. But now it's already with the documents sent to you. When I look at this, there's a lot of talks about AI agents, and Gartner coined the phrase autonomous supply chain during their Gartner symposium in Florida and Barcelona last month. So was also the discussion: do AI agents talk to each other, and are they ready for that? And I've seen some examples, but I think I was curious. So will Debbie and Ava talk to each other, or they are still, only busy with their goal? What do you expect?
Yeah, so we're currently, I think, in the phase where they're working next to each other, and they're set up to work that way, and they try to, let's say, minimize the exceptions, right? So where humans, let's say, before, I don't know, let's say you have to have 10% of the shipment, something is not ideal, and maybe only a small percentage of that you really wanted to take action on, or you could take action on because you need to do it manually today. Would like to have the specialized agents to minimize that percentage and reduce the exception work that needs to be done by humans. So today they're really separate ones. You set them up so you can determine yourself how and how often you want to use them and in what use case specifically. But for sure, there is now the discussion popping up on maybe we do one agent that's then interacting with the different specialized agents.
Yeah. So I've seen agents talking to each other, one responsible for procurement of logistics, another one for the planning of logistics, and the first one want to have a whole lane being contracted for the whole year, etc., to get more cost savings, etc. Whereas the other want to have flexibility. So basically, I've seen discussions between AI agents, and it's quite funny because then you get all kind of nonsense talking to each other. But the main thing is, if you have different goals, if the logistics procurement AI agent have a different goals, so cost savings, whereas the logistics planning booking agent want to have flexibility and speed, etc., you will get different kind of goals, and then you get hallucinations, and then you have to stop it. So maybe you should have an overall AI agent with a clear overall goal, and then talk to other AI agents, something like that.
Yeah, I think the autonomous is really it's becoming maybe a bit more autonomous, but it's not I don't expect in the near future to be fully autonomous. Just like you said, right? There are conflicting interests, and I think humans need to make a decision, but they can be an extension of let's say the human decision. So you don't need to pay so much attention after you set up the right guardrails or guidelines for them to be active.
Yeah. And basically what I wrote a blog about it, it's the 80-20 rule of AI. I think AI agents can do 80% of the work, but still you have to have 20% of human in the loop, to decide of recommendations, decisions being put forward by AI agent, or some anomalies you have to detect and resolve yourself. So I think the 80-20 rule is applicable for AI agents, AI in general, in many cases. So 20% is still done by humans, and 80% can be automated, something like that. And that it's also in line with the more autonomous than totally 100% autonomous.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And if you look at the further future ahead, so where do you expect where we see more things of AI impacting TMS and logistics as a whole?
Yeah, so there's let's say maybe the scope of the different agents will increase somewhat, or there will be new ones added. I think that's one development. And like I said before, there's also discussions on do we create one agent that's maybe coordinating with several of the sort of specialized agents. So that's a discussion ongoing where I think everybody's experimenting a bit to see what makes most sense. And next to the whole AI discussion, I think what is critical independent of how exactly AI will function in the next few years is that data is the gold that you need for AI to be effective. So having one system collecting all of that data across all of those transport modes for in and outbound, that enables any type of AI to detect and see what's wrong and take action. And the data preferably in such a way that you know what the source is and can take action if the source is not delivering what you expect. So if a TMS source of a carrier is not delivering, you either can interact with that TMS to solve it, or with an agent from that party, or with that party themselves to get the data. So having a network where you know the actors on it and you can take an action to fix something, is critical for any future AI.
So you mentioned you have all kind of customers in the supply chain upstream in all kind of industries, and also you have logistic service providers as customers. In a broader sense, I can imagine that Descartes could see patterns where certain industries should work together more closely, get synergies, etc. So look at the network in a different way to with your tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers in raw materials, etc. So there, and maybe you talk about a digital supply chain twin or network twin. That's also something that could happen in the future when you have all this data available from the different industries, etc. Combine loads from different kind of industries, and sometimes 3PLs do it themselves. But do you expect there something for Descartes as a role to play, where you see where synergies could happen?
Yeah, so it's and we had this. We have a lot of data and insights, but it's often the cargo owners that want to work with their trusted group of carriers and forwarders. So they're not super eager to go beyond that, and they see benefits also because with, let's say, their group, and it can still be 50 or 100, right? That's not always 2 or 3. It can be a larger group. It's easier to make agreements on what to do in certain situations, right? So if we talk about either return flows or, hey, data is missing or something is lacking, then we can automatically fix it easier if it's a known party with a known agreement, versus companies that are really flexible and use a different carrier for every shipment. So there's some benefits of sticking with a certain set group. But on the other hand, as the network grows and the insight grows, there's also more abilities for us to share data between parties. So who knows? Maybe we can see a bit more cross party planning to optimize the overall efficiency.
Yeah. So, and maybe the one thing, to wrap it up, so we also get at the Q&A, and maybe there's some questions popping still, but I can imagine you showed a map of the globe, etc. for where's my stuff. But I also can imagine if you put all those maps on top of each other, you get heat maps where things are going in the right way and where do you see bottlenecks and things happening.
Yeah. So and you see that very quickly with all the events that are happening, right? So if it's indeed the Suez Canal or a bridge that's collapsing or strikes or whatever, so you immediately see on the map a drastic impact in routes of ocean vessels, for example. Yeah.
Final question. So just popping in, does TMS system has the ability to learn from historical data from companies, or how can internal data be integrated in the system?
Yeah, so it uses a lot of data to learn from, and learn can be on different ways. So either learning to update how to estimate ETAs, for example, but learn can also be, hey, we set up some guardrails for certain types of planning, do activity A when in situation B. And that data can also be used to change the guardrails and make it maybe more efficient the next time a certain situation happens.
All right, thanks. So, if there are more questions, so Elmer and myself will be available right after this in the next 30 minutes. So you can sit down with us and have a conversation. We don't bite. And next, you can download the company IT portfolio. You can fill it out yourself. So what am I using and what I want to use, what should be replaced, etc. So that's over there. And also the European Transportation Management Benchmark Survey by Descartes is also being available. And also the data contact details of Elmer. For now, for all the listeners listening in, thank you, either live or in the recording. Thank you for listening in. And Elmer, thank you for the explanation. It was interesting to to talk about the real application of AI agents with Debbie and the likes. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for being here. Let's get to the
let's go to the virtual lounge. Yes, and thanks for listening in. And there will be a next webinar next Wednesday, and we'll talk with Connecti. That's the winner of the European Supply Chain contest last month, and that's for next week. For now, thank you and bye-bye.